Well, hello. Welcome back. My name is Bill Donath, and I'm the president of Logan County Genealogical and Historical Society. And today we're going to be talking about making digital copies of our collections. Now, there are a couple of reasons to digitize collections. One we experienced in October 2021 when the building next to the society had a fire. And it was scary for quite a while to determine whether or not any of our collections were damaged. We were fortunate that the only damage we experienced was smoke damage, but it still took a long time for the restoration company to take care of that and put us back in business. It was a full year after the fire before we could reopen. So getting additional copies of everything somewhere off-site is one of our goals, to make sure that if a fire should occur in the center, we would at least have the digital copies to fall back on. The second reason for digitizing is to prepare a document for indexing. Large documents are difficult to manage when you're working at a computer trying to make an index. So getting a digital copy where you can have it on the screen at the same time you have your spreadsheet or whatever method you're using to make the index. So we're going to talk about indexing today, and not indexing, digitization today. And we're going to set this paper up to be able to be indexed when we're finished with it. This requires a camera stand, and this camera stand I've had for maybe 30 years. Not with this base. This base is much larger. I had to make this base to accommodate the larger papers. Because when I bought it, it was just a small board for up to 10 by 14 photographs and just reproducing photographs. And I also had to remake the arm here, because the camera on the original was right here. And the camera needs to be in the middle of the paper to be able to get good coverage of the paper and make sure that the quality over here and over here is the same as it's in the center. So we've centered the camera over the paper. And another thing we need to watch for is making sure the table and the camera are parallel to one another. The object and the image need to be parallel. So we have to use I use a little 6-inch level to do that. I can see it now. I was looking for it here a second ago. I'm going to have this little 6-inch level, and I just check the table wherever this thing might be sitting, because no table is ever level. And then I get the bubble both directions, north, south, east, west, and then I reproduce that bubble up here by changing the settings and rotating the camera whichever way it needs to go. So we have that done, and we have to make sure that the paper stays in the place where you've got it. So we use an indexing item, and I just use a simple carpenter square, and I butt it up against this stop over here so that I can put the paper back in exactly the same location every time. That way I can make sure each page has the same amount of coverage, and make sure it stays in the middle too. So we have the paper, and by the way, this paper, I don't know if I can get this close enough to you so you can see what it is, but it's the October 23rd, 1940 Lincoln Evening Courier. And what is important about this paper, and the reason we need to keep it, is that nobody's really done a lot of World War II research in Logan County yet. And this is kind of the beginning of that. What's listed here is the draft serial numbers for all the young men who were of draft age in the county at that time in 1940, which was more than a year before we actually got into the war. All right, so now it's just a matter of shooting. Now we have this camera is set up to have a landscape of this. So that means when I have all the images here, I'm going to have to rotate them 90 degrees left to get them back where I can read them. So we take the camera on first. Okay, and we take that image, and then open the paper. Now this one's in pretty rough shape. You can see that it's starting, there's been tearing. It was stored in somebody's collection somewhere and then donated to the society. So it's not in real bad shape. I've tried to work with worse, I'll tell you that. But now we've got a conundrum here. That's page 2 over there. And if I want to keep them in order, I would have to move this paper over this way. And it just won't work that way. So what I do is take the odd pages first. So I do number 3. So that's page 3 I just took. Page 5, making sure the paper stayed in the right place. Picture of page 5. And a picture of page 7. Okay, now I do keep track of the order the images are in and the page numbers. I know this is an 8-page paper, so I'm going to have 8 images. The first image was page 1. The second image is page 3. The fourth image is page 7. So we have those recorded now, and then we have to set up to do the even numbered pages. So we close that. Set the paper in its proper location. And now this is page 8. So image 5 on my list is going to be page 8. So we start counting down from here. There's 8. Page 6. Page 4. And page 2. Off. And we're finished with the photographing part. So now I would take the camera upstairs and sit in my nice easy chair and hook up the cable to the computer and download these images so I can work with them. And then that would involve cropping the picture, because I've got it set up so it catches about an inch around or a little more. And then make sure it's a nice crisp image and the resolution's really good. Otherwise I have to come back and take a picture of whatever page needs to be replaced. I've been doing indexing for nearly 20 years now. I started in 2003. It is 20 years, isn't it? And I would go to the Lincoln Public Library every week for about an hour and a half and look at their microfilm. If you've worked with microfilm, you know that's difficult. You can enlarge the image just so much, and it really gets tiring when you're trying to read small print, especially if it was a large paper and the enlargement doesn't bring it up to what you need. So I started the hard way back then. I would have this, I made up this little form. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but this form I made up would be sitting right next to the microfilm reader, and I would go down column 1 and I would read the names and put them in where they are here, and then I would I had issue date, so I know which paper to come back and look at for that name, and the page on the paper, and then an event, the title of whatever was going on. If it was a vital statistic like a birth or a death or a marriage, I would put that date here as well. So those things are available, and this was the Lincoln Herald from 1859 to 1873 that I did this for. Fortunately, it was a weekly paper, so there weren't 7 times as many to go through. But we had, then I would type this when I got home so that I could put it in alphabetical order. I would type it into a spreadsheet and then alphabetize it, and then all the information for that name would be carried to its proper location. The problem got to be that as I got older, that enlargement on the machine just didn't work anymore. So when we were given the shoe collection, which is the Lincoln Herald, but the actual papers, and we had about 800 issues of that, it was an opportunity to start this digitization process, and it took 5 years to actually sanitize the papers, humidify them, flatten them, clean them, get them ready to photograph. And all those images still exist. All those images are on our website with the index so that you can find those. It takes a membership to be able to access that on the website, though. Then so we got that. Now I finished that during COVID. That's what kept me busy and not go crazy. So we had the old way. Now we have the new way, because I can bring this image up on the screen, enlarge it to where it's comfortable to read, and then I can open the Excel program and just go right down the list and just keep rolling or scrolling the paper up until I had the entire list finished. So it's much easier to do now, and you get a better product too. So I said this paper was it's the early part of World War II research. So it's also just 2 weeks ahead of the 1940 presidential election, in which President Roosevelt defeated Wendell Willkie. And if you don't know what Wendell Willkie looked like, you can see him on the backside. Now the Lincoln Herald and its successors started out as a Republican paper. They did no bones about it. They said this is a mouthpiece for the Republican Party, and we're going to talk the Republican issues. Now the what we need to understand is that the Democratic papers all fell out of the way. So we don't have, when there are arguments being put into the Herald in favor of the Republicans, we no longer have the Democratic response in the Democratic papers, because they were around. There was at one time 6 newspapers in Lincoln, 4 weeklies and 2 dailies. So there was a lot of information out there, and some of them are on microfilm, like at the Lincoln Presidential Library, and they can be accessed. I've been down there many times. My wife and I do research down there. But that's digitizing, and that is leading us up to indexing. So we're going to be showing you all these steps along the way as we get there. So you'll see videos, or probably have already seen videos on cleaning and identifying items that need to be digitized. If we have a large group of small items, to make sure that they are available online or in family group settings or files, then we need to make photographs of them. But there's a lot of uses for digitizing collections. So until next time, thank you for stopping by. Well, sorry I couldn't let you go. There were a couple items that I need to clarify on what I was telling you earlier. First one is that the Lincoln Herald, I talked about the 1859 to 1873 index. That doesn't have images for it. But the shoe collection picked up in 1873 and was continuous to 1882, and then had some extra years, 1884, 1889, 1894, and 1895, that do have the images with them, and that is a separate index for that. The second thing I wanted to clarify was, you're probably all sitting there saying, well, newspapers have page numbers on them already. Why is he keeping track of the images and the page numbers? Well, the experience I've had is that the Lincoln Herald didn't have page numbers. I had to do this so that if there was a story on page 1 that continued on page 7, I had to make sure that that story was there when they got to page 7. Otherwise, they would have been disappointed. So that those are the 2 points I need to clarify and add to this video. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.